Ah, 420. That would explain the smell. Alright, hey everybody. This is Derek. Going to be doing some sauerkraut today. One of the Facebook groups that I was on, they were asking about it, and I had some cabbage I was going to turn into sauerkraut anyway. So this is how I do it. There's a bunch of different ways that you can. This is the easiest that I've found. So move the camera and we'll get started. So making sauerkraut is actually really easy. You know, there's minimal ingredients and minimal equipment that you wouldn't already have. So what we're going to do first, I got my knife. I already sharpened it, but make sure you have a good sharp knife when you're doing anything cooking. But get this. Got a little bad spot here. Okay. So the easiest way I've found to do cabbage, or cut these types of cabbages at least. I got one regular one, and then really nice purple one. I'm going to put them together. My sauerkraut's going to come out purple, but that's okay. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to look for the core, or the stem, and get as close to it as you can, and then that, and then just do the same thing with the rest of it until you're just left with the center. Okay. And this is the last quarter. Alright, so we got this, and then whatever you can flake off the top of this, you can use too. Beyond that, I usually don't bother with this piece. It's mainly just what's left of the stem. So not a whole lot you can do with that. You could mince it up, I guess, if you wanted to, but there's not really any need. From here, you need to slice it up into whatever size pieces you want for kraut. I usually like to do a finer one with mine because I put it on a lot of sandwiches and stuff, and it just it lays a lot better. So, sorry, I'm left-handed, so you're probably just going to see my hand on this. But you can cut this any size, any shape you want. Doesn't really matter. You're just going for surface area, because this will help pull the moisture out when you're trying to make your brine, and it'll also give the natural bacteria more area to hang on to when they're doing their thing. So. Okay. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to be dropping it into my big pink bowl off to the side. So we'll use that on a later step. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this, and then work on doing this one, and I'll be right back. So as you can see, I got all the cabbage chopped up. I was just kind of throwing it in there. I mean, some pieces are bigger than others. You know, it happens. Not a big deal. It's not gonna hurt anything. You know, you're probably not gonna want to share this with company anyway. So, so what we're gonna do now. Oh, and yeah, this is all that's left of the 2 cabbages. So, you know, it's a pretty efficient process. And then if you wanted to use the stems, You could. I don't. It's a lot more work than I'd want to get into because these are very, very thick, like very dense. So you're going to add non-iodized salt to this, and then you're going to start, I've heard a lot of people say massaging it. What you're actually doing is just beating the tar out of it. You're breaking down the cell walls, and that releases moisture, and then the salt helps the cabbage release moisture too. And that creates a brine that you are going to add with the cabbage to your fermentation crock or your jar, whichever. And that's what's going to keep it from spoiling until you're ready to put it in the fridge. So for this amount, I'm probably going to go, this is a tablespoon, so probably about 1.5 tablespoons for this. I'm going to be packing it into a half-gallon jar. So you can just throw it in the middle, it doesn't really matter, because you're going to be mixing it up anyway. But yeah, just give it a good mix. Make sure the salt gets in there. And then just going to let it sit for a little bit. I can already tell on my hands, but you'll be able to tell in a few minutes that it's already started to lose its moisture, to pull some of the moisture out of the cabbage. So yeah, I'll do that. Let it do its thing. So this is what I'm going to be using. It's just a standard ball jar or a mason jar. This is a half-gallon. You can scale this up as big or as small as you want. This is what I'm going to use because I use the sauerkraut quite a bit. Another thing you want to take into consideration is how you're going to keep your cabbage underneath your brine while it's fermenting, because if any of it comes to the top, that's basically a little landing pad for mold and all kinds of other stuff to get in and ruin it for you. A lot of people, they will get, there's these fermentation weights that you can get online. They're about this big. Some people use river rocks. They'll bring them inside and clean them really, really well, and then use them that way. I know there's some people, I don't like this method, that they'll put a cabbage leaf on top of the kraut to or the soon-to-be kraut, I guess, to keep it underneath the brine. I don't really like that idea, because if you do that and that leaf comes up, again, it's a landing pad for all kinds of stuff. Okay, been sitting over here for a minute. You can kind of see on the bottom, I hope. Yeah, catch it in the light a little bit. But, you can kind of see in the glare right here, it's starting to lose some moisture. So, once it starts doing that, just get in here with your hands and just start squeezing it as hard as you can, breaking it down. You're not going to overdo it at this step, really. As long as you don't turn it into a paste, and I don't think I could do it for that long. Like, this really gets your forearms and your wrists going. But if you have wrist problems, arthritis, carpal tunnel, or whatever, you can use like a rolling pin, like what I've got over here. You can slam that down in there, make kind of a kraut pounder type thing. And they make basically it looks like a baton that you can use to smash down your kraut when you're doing this, make things a little easier. But yeah, so just going to be doing this. As you do this, it's going to get you're going to feel a lot more moisture coming out. Since I'm using red kraut, it's obviously going to stain my hands a little bit. So if you're worried about that, wear some gloves. But yeah, just keep doing this until you get a decent amount of water pulled out. And if you need a break from doing this, you know, sometimes it, you know, it gets to be a little too much for your forearms or your hands. You know, just leaving it out, the salt will still pull the moisture out. So it'll still be doing a little bit of work, but doing it this way kind of speeds things up a little bit. So I'm going to continue doing this, and then when I'm ready to pack it, I'll turn the camera back on. So as you can see, this has changed a little bit, and let's see if I can do this without, there you go. So it's got quite a bit of brine leaking out of it now, and there's still quite a bit left in it. Let's see if I can. So yeah, but yeah, this is pretty limp at this point, and it's supposed to be. You know, you can tell. You know, that used to be a piece of stem from the leaves. But yeah, I mean, you broke down quite a bit of tissue. Let's see if I can tie this in a knot. Ta-da! But so once you get it down to this point, or to where you're happy with it, you will start packing it into your jar. And one thing I like about these is I can get my hand down in them. If you use a fermentation crock, it's a lot easier because they don't have the dip or the neck to them. But what you're going to do is you're just going to get handfuls of kraut, or soon to be kraut, and put it in here. You don't have to worry about the brine so much just yet. But once you get a decent amount in here, to start with at least, you're going to want to get your hand down in here and pack it down as tight as you possibly can. You know, the kraut pounder that I was talking about earlier, this is what they use it for. You're squeezing the brine out of the cabbage leaves a little more, and you're also getting rid of any air bubbles, because you don't want any air bubbles in this at all. Because fermentation is anaerobic, which means that it happens without oxygen, or it can only happen without oxygen. Whereas if you had air bubbles in here, aerobic bacteria, which are bacteria that like oxygen, that, you know, breathe like you and me, that they'll be able to get started, and it'll give you all kinds of weird tastes and smells and stuff that you probably don't want to deal with once you get it done fermenting. Again, we're going to be packing this down as tight as we can. And if you can see it, the brine will start to kind of... Okay, so I got things kind of sort of cleaned up, but I'm going to hold this up to the camera so you can see that color. Always like watching these. And eventually, within a few days, all of this is going to be purple, because the brine and the red cabbage is going to dye the regular head of cabbage purple. It'll all be like a lighter shade of purple, but yeah. So what I do to weigh it down to make sure that the brine stays above everything. I know a lot of people don't like using plastic, but this is what I have available to me. What I do is I'll stick this down in here as much as I can, where I get the lid or the top of the bag where it's wrapped around the top of the lid, and then from here I will fill this with water. And then you might have to kind of reorganize it a little bit, or add a little extra water. But what that does is it does two things this way. It keeps everything below the surface, or pretty much everything. There's going to be the inevitable like little tiny piece, but if you leave it like this, the air can't get to it, the bacteria can't get to it, so it's not going to be that big a deal. But yeah, you're going to want to fill this up to where the brine is a little higher up. As you can see, the brine, it's like that, and you want to leave this pretty much uncovered. What I normally do is I'll do this, and then I'll put a coffee filter over it with a rubber band. That way the bags, if the bag does, for whatever reason, drop brine below, won't be that big a deal. But yeah, just a coffee filter, and then I'll put the ring back on top, and I'll let it sit on the counter. So that's pretty much the whole process. I'll change camera angles again and try to talk about how long to leave it like this. Alright, so as far as how long to let it ferment, it's kind of a choose your own adventure more often than not. It depends on the season. From my experience, quite a bit. It'll take things a lot longer to ferment in the winter when it's cooler than it will in the summer. And then each person has their own specific tastes as to, how sour do they want their sauerkraut, or, the opposite end of the spectrum. From my experience, I let it go 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes longer. During that time, you may need to top off the brine a little bit, because the brine will evaporate fairly slowly, but it'll evaporate. But yeah, just keep an eye on it. If you haven't done it before, easiest thing to do is just check on it, every 3-4 days. Pull the, in my case, pull the bag out, get a fork, take a little bit off the top, eat it. If it's not sour enough, let it go a little bit longer. If it's just to your liking, go ahead and throw it in the fridge. Once you put it in the fridge, it's good for up to a year, is what I've been taught. So I'm sure you could probably keep it longer than that, but I'm just going to stick with a year for now. It probably won't last that long anyway. I usually go through one of those in 2 or 3 months. So, but yeah, if you have any questions or comments, let me know.